Time for world politics, and as always, there's a lot of things going on in the landscape of politics, both globally as well as, of course, right here in the United States of America and all along those lines. So, one of the things that people are talking about still is the debate and whether Joe Biden should drop out or not drop out, and all along those lines. And of course, we've got a number of races that are taking place, and we've got Supreme Court decisions, and we've got all kinds of other things taking place, including elections in France and other parts of the world as well. So it'll definitely be interesting to see what our folks' thoughts are on a number of these things. One thing that I had brought up earlier, and we'll bring in my esteemed panels as we definitely had folks on World Edition, and we had some of this conversation. But they've got some folks that are wondering how much in control is Jill Biden. So that was one of the things that I was talking about earlier, because I do remember back in the day being a child in terms of college of the 80s, that there was those old kind of accusations around Ronald Reagan and how much Nancy Reagan was in charge and all in that space. And of course, there was conversations about his health, meaning Ronald Reagan's as well. And of course, Jill Biden is now on the cover of Vogue as well. So definitely interested to hear what folks' thoughts are on that. And as I brought up on the show earlier as well, there's this notion of some scandalous kind of commercials. We know that we've got scandalous commercials going on with the race here in North Carolina between Stein and between Robinson, and they've definitely been using even barbs as to rape kits and all along those lines, and who is being more effective or least effective. And one of the commercials I had seen, actually put out by one of the Republican groups, was actually pointing out who one of the bad guys was from El Salvador, and it kind of reminded me of the Horton ads that cost Dukakis, if I'm remembering correctly, that election and all along those lines. Willie Horton, I believe, was that gentleman's name. I believe this guy is a Victor, and I forgot his Hispanic surname and all along those lines. But definitely wanted to know what folks' thoughts are about both of those ideas. So I'm going to bring in one of our founders of the network, Hugh Calhoun, also bring in a good friend, Jacoby McDuffie, and also bring in Sasha Spar, who has joined us as well and everything. But that's what I was saying, because we were bringing it up at the end of World Edition. What is our thoughts about this notion that maybe the country isn't being run by Joe Biden, and that Jill has more say so than is being out there? Now, definitely there's people that have made parallels between Jill and Nancy Reagan.
So BS conspiracy theories from the right. But just like 20 minutes ago, I had an idea that's got me all hepped up, which is you keep the ticket, but you flip it. So it's Harris Biden. So Harris steps into president, and then Biden becomes the elder statesman. What do you guys think? It addresses the perceived deficiencies of each of them. So,
well, I think we all know that that's just a possibility. Anyway, I agree in some sense, but she's stupid. I'm sorry to say, but when she sat there and was telling all these parents, go take out an equity loan and send your kids to school with it, I'm like, that's not the answer to the problem, to put these poor parents into more debt in an equity line loan that costs more now today than it ever did. So I don't think she's all there when it comes to our best needs.
Well, I don't think you're basing that on.
I think that's more of
on one bad answer.
I think that's more of
I am, because that's a really stupid answer. It's honestly answering other questions that I just finally had to turn it off. I was getting so aggravated. I'm like, what financial literacy school did she go to? None. But
no, I disagree. Honestly, I think that what that answer was, or what that answer tells, is that she's in a different class than the individuals that she's actually reaching.
That's what I mean. We don't need.
So it's not a stupid answer. And the thing is, she's in that same class that everybody up there is in, except for the others that are making extra money. So that viewpoint is a viewpoint of those that are trying to push only charter schools and private schools. Same viewpoint as those that are trying to say, hey, we can't have public schools.
Well, no, that's why I don't want her.
View. So I don't think it's a stupid thing. And I think actually she's a smart person. And interestingly enough, they've done you can have, okay, let's talk about Trump.
Well, Trump answers stupid too. I'm not saying he doesn't. I'm just saying
that. But that wasn't that really wasn't that bad of an answer. That was just more so, hey, I'm speaking from my experience and my background.
No,
And
I
so
don't think
with
she was
that,
speaking from that. I think she was telling people to go out and borrow against their houses to send their kids to school when today is not the day to do that.
I disagree. I
So
think she was speaking from her experience because she's a wealthy person. Wealthy
her
people say do
experience,
stuff
her
that way.
experience comes from the San Francisco Bay Area, which is the freaking fanciest area of America right now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
but
was
the
Vic, along
just
same
those
thing.
same lines, and this is for everybody here
people
on
who
the panel.
struggle. That
Along
was
those same
not a
lines,
good
one of the
answer for
criticisms
people who
against
struggle.
And
Kamala
nobody's
is
arguing
this
that.
notion that
I
she was
think that we're
very
saying that it's
harsh
just
in the way she handled the criminals there in California. So I've heard that from even some
well,
progressives that are
How
not
did
the
she
biggest
handle
fans
the
of
criminals?
Kamala and all along those lines. So what is our thoughts around that? Because I've heard that from both, not just the conservative side, but the progressive side as well, where some people are very harsh on the way that she was handling things when she was the chief prosecutor in that area and everything.
Put
So
a
what is
ton
that
of
take?
people away for marijuana crime back when marijuana was illegal. But you'd think the right would be okay with this because they're supposed to be the party of law and order.
no,
And lock them up.
all they care about is the political, or the politics of it, and that is a way to break away minority groups from her. So they drive the wedge of, well, she's only putting away black people. No, she was doing her job. That's what her job was as DA. And yes, she is tough on crime. Isn't that what you want her to be? Is tough on crime. But yeah, she just did her job. She was a DA. What's she supposed to do? Let people walk? And then now you're gonna say, well, she doesn't do anything for crime. So that argument is still based within politics. And they did a poll on her currently, and she actually is within the margin of error, they're within the margin of error, where Biden is actually outside of the margin of error right now.
Against
So
Trump,
she
yeah,
has possibility.
that poll you're mentioning, she did better than any other hypothetical candidate against
Yep.
Trump.
And honestly, I think she'd be a good candidate because honestly, on the top of the ticket, if the Democrat Party puts a woman at the top of the ticket, right now, this year, the women are going to carry the vote. And it was black women that saved the vote from Donald Trump the last time. Now, if you add in everybody or all other women involved, and that would be a very strong ticket if you put Kamala Harris on top of the ticket. And then, honestly, even if you put, well, Gretchen Whitmer would be the second one, but she struggles still, but she'd still do better. But right now, I think the women are going to carry the vote this year.
Also, she's 59. She's
Yep.
a full generation younger than any of the other candidates. Also, there's the black don't crack thing. She looks even younger than that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the only way to win me over is if you tell me that she is, for women's rights. Then maybe
she's been the biggest advocate for women's rights and going against. That's the one who's been going out and talking about the Roe v. Wade case and everything that the Republicans are doing in terms of the Roe v. Wade case. She's been the biggest advocate for women's rights in that way. So she's been great on it.
Hey, speaking
So
of
I
that
have
and
a
everything,
long- Sorry.
just really quickly, because one of Sasha's friends, that's actually one of his people on the show, brought up an interesting idea as we were talking after the show and everything. So what is our thoughts around the possibility of a person that used to be a Democrat joining the Trump ticket? Because one of the things that Jonathan brought up, and we were talking about this after the show and everything, with this notion of Tulsa Gabbard being his VP and all along those lines. So what is our thoughts around this notion and everything? Because she is a Democrat. Some people say she was a conservative Democrat, and now she is switched over to the Republican Party. So what is our notion around Tulsi being Trump's VP?
She's terrible. She comes out of a cult background. She's homophobic. She's opportunistic. The best thing she has going for her is she's pretty. Sorry to be sexist, but she's.
Yeah, I mean, you're spot on. She's a political opportunist. When she lost the Democrat debate, she left because Fox News paid her or gave her the airtime, and then she became a Fox News analyst. She's just a political opportunist, and she found that she can get paid, and so she's getting paid.
And
she's no different than any other guy, really. But she just found she was a smart businesswoman. Hey, I'm gonna just get paid. I don't really have any cares on this or that. Give me the money.
Yeah, and then she doesn't have much content. That like she comes out of Hawaii, which is not a super competitive state politically because it's small, and I just think she's BS. Now, I had a long talk about Harris with a Canadian friend last night, and I'm like, what? I think she's got very low approval ratings based on like nothing. Kim, you don't like her based on one horrible answer.
No, I was listening to the whole thing. I had to just shut her off because I had no means to sit there and call her and go, what are you teaching these people who need to know something better? It wasn't just one. It just kept going and going and going. And I'm like, I got to cut her off. So.
Well, speaking of cutting folks off and everything.
If your answer was not right, then what would be, in your opinion, the right answer?
The right answer is that we need to change the laws and
it's too far. Change the law, it will take 150 years. What's available today?
Grants.
What is the right answer?
Grants.gov. I would send every parent because there are millions of dollars of grants that don't get used, don't even get applied for. Millions. And that would have been the first word out of my mouth.
There's of $35 trillion. So if you're saying that there are millions are available, pay down the debt. You cannot send people to schools or universities.
My next thing would be for those of you who don't have the money, instead of putting yourself and your children in debt, send them to community colleges first and get your first 2 years out of the way and then continue on. See, I've worked with poverty for years, Sasha, and I've worked with domestic violence victims. So I know how to get things done without having to go into somebody's equity of their home and destroy their life savings, which that would do to almost every parent she was probably speaking to because of the interest rates that exist today.
So she should have mentioned community colleges and she failed.
Right. And grants and so many other ways to get around doing this. You don't need to go to a big university the first 2 years. You can save close to $50,000 by just doing that.
Okay, so let's agree that that's not your area of expertise, and therefore your answer was not probably the best.
Well, most of her answers to the people she was speaking with were not, they weren't good for the type of people she was speaking with.
I remember Kamala Harris, one Senate hearing where she made all these Republicans as particular names. I remember she made them like school children. She was just on top of them. She wouldn't allow them even say a word. And she made them look so pity, so helpless, including someone like Senator Jordan, who is a big shot now and so on. She made him look miserable, and not only him. So she has something in her sleeve that she can unleash. I mean, she's at the stage of her life. She has a happy marriage. She's a vice president. I mean, there is very little for her that she hasn't achieved in her life. Whether she wants to become a president, I'm not even sure about that. But
I mean, if I were her, vanity would get in my way because every president that's ever made it there, they turn white. They're here to, well, I'm already white. They age about 10 years that first year. I don't think there's enough Botox to prevent it. So, yeah, if I were her, vice presidents, I'm not going to say it's a breeze, but it's definitely, I don't think the level of, the level of effort that you'd have to put into. I mean, she gets a lot of respect for what she does. I'm just saying that she should have been counseled a little bit better on what is better for people in middle class and poverty when they're trying to send their kids to school and just get out of debt themselves. But like
And
you
Kim,
guys said, that's not her area of expertise.
Not
And
her.
that's
No.
where
not
she's
her area of
from.
expertise. But Kim,
So,
along those same lines, and I brought it up earlier, and I do remember it when it happened under that last race that I mentioned and everything. But I'm wondering how much of a, and I'll use that term because I used it before and everything, is an albatross going to be on the campaign? This very nasty commercial that is going out that is basically talking about the gentleman named Victor Antonio Martinez Hernandez, who apparently was accused of killing a 37-year-old Maryland woman and also assaulting a 9-year-old girl and doing some other very horrendous things. And like I said earlier, it did kind of remind me, and I think I said the name right, of Willie Horton and what was going on in that case. So it does seem like they are trying to paint this as the face of what could happen if Biden is reelected and all along those lines. So I just wondered how effective as a commercial tactic is that going to be? Because we do know sometimes people get caught up in this whole notion of a boogeyman, and definitely this is Victor, the guy who's becoming the boogeyman, just like Willie Horton was back in '88 and everything. So I just wanted your take on how effective this commercial will be. Anybody who wants to tackle that?
Well, it probably will be effective with the base. I don't know how many people's minds it'll change, but they could turn it right around. It's not like 0 people entered America under Trump. Find some bad guy who entered under Trump and say, look, they're showing this guy, but this guy got in under Trump, and Biden has a plan to fix the border, and Trump scuttled it. Just come right back at him. The Democratic messaging needs to be a lot more aggressive.
But you see,
I agree.
all messaging, all campaign, everything is coming from the top. In a Republican environment, Trump is one, and I must admit that he is very good leader. He can be a liar, he can be a criminal, which he is, and so on. But he is a very good leader because he can motivate his troops. It's all coming from top down, and he basically he came short of just that much to remain a president after he lost election. He could have remained president for another 4 years or maybe much longer. We don't know that, because if he would somehow stay in power for another 4 years, I think it would be another 8 years or so. Now, if Biden would be a leader, if Biden would want it to be in power, what Biden would have done now, since the decision of Supreme Court yesterday about immunity, Biden would declare a military situation in the United States. He would dissolve Supreme Court, get Trump and all top Republicans to jail instantly in a matter of 45 minutes, all in jail. So now, yeah, he did wrong things, but again, with immunity, so it will take 20 years to decide whether it was his right moves covered by immunity or it's not. It's not covered by immunity. It will take 20 years. There will be no one alive. The Biden himself, Trump, all the Supreme Court judges, nobody will be alive in 20 years. So he would stay in power as long as he lives. I don't think that he will live that long.
But that's not
not much.
That's not Biden. Biden's an institutional.
So a hell with institutional person. He learned all his life. He read Constitution and he read what's right and what's wrong. But that's not a leader. He is not a leader. That's a problem with the Biden. Let's put it this way.
I will have to push back and say that Trump isn't a leader either. It's not that he's leading the Republican Party. The Republican Party for decades has always coalesced and had that one unified message. They have one talking point for whatever. If it's about Biden, they're going to have that one talking point. It gets repeated. There are talking points that are just repeated quickly by every person who follows the conservative message, right down to the T. And we've had it happen on plenty of our shows where it's the same exact talking point. The tough thing up under the Democrat Party, the reason they call it a big tent is because you have a big tent. You have a ton of people and you're trying to pull them all together to stay on one unified message. When you have 50 people from, the Biden end with the Biden end to the Bernie Sanders end to, the Jamal Bowmans to all the way down to Hakeem Jeffrey. I mean, you have just such a wide array of things that you're trying to bring together. The best, in all honesty, one of the best leaders, quote unquote, of the party that have been in the Democrat Party for a while, Nancy Pelosi, because she had to deal with that same group, and it was roughly about the same split that they're having to deal with in the Republican Party. But she was able to get the Democrat Party, the big tent that it is, and vote and have a unified message on some particular things. So I don't think Trump is a good leader. It's just that the people that want him, the MAGA crowd, has the power of the party. The party itself has to coalesce around one message and one person because they don't have a platform to push besides Project 2025. And they're just coalescing around Trump.
Trump likes to be mean and crazy. When people bring him ideas to what kind of ads to do, he'll pick the ones that are the meanest and the craziest. And I'd like to see a shakeup in Biden's campaign staff. They seem, I don't know anything about them, but they don't seem very aggressive.
Well, speaking of shakeup, there's the possibility.
Trump has been credibly accused of raping a girl who was 13 years old at the time. And I've seen just like very little messaging about that. And 26 women have accused him of sexual harassment and assault.
So you mean he's two peas in a pod with his buddy that he's been buddies with since he was young through.
Yeah.
Everyone says, oh, they were just friends when they were younger. I go, no, that's young and old. And there's a bunch more pictures. I don't have them all on this thing, but no. So two peas in a pod. Thank you.
Yeah, if you do ads, Trump rape a bunch of people. If you don't think he's going to rape America, then you're deluded.
Okay, here's let me add to what I said before. I watched debates, and what's happened is that at some point in the middle of debate or closer to the end, but more in the middle, Trump said openly to Biden that you are criminal and I will make sure that I will lock you up in jail once I will become a president. Just that shouldn't motivate the Democratic personnel, even hopefully Biden himself, or it's a little bit too late. He's just too old even to be motivated.
Along those same lines.
Do something about it. Because there is a real danger for him to end up his life in jail. It's a real danger. You don't even understand. He is talking real things because once Trump will become to power, he will have all power to himself. The little Supreme Court and all that other stuff is becoming immaterial. He will be a real king. Let's face it.
And the sad thing is, Tasha, based on the project,
I looked up the 13-year-old complaint. She just filed the lawsuit again a week ago. And she has a witness that was lining up these girls for Trump and Epstein.
Not going to go anywhere. That lawsuit,
it won't go anywhere because it's too old. And Epstein is deceased now, so it won't go anywhere. But and too many people will stand behind Trump. She will be defamed. She will be defamed for life. And so she's better off just saying, well, I got raped as a girl. And
that's why she dropped
was in the wrong place. She was in the wrong place, in the wrong time. Let's face it. And,
they recruited her by making her promises and, luring her in. And the woman worked for Epstein and Trump. So...
Yeah, I mean, that's the way Epstein worked. He'd have girls give happy ending massages. and he'd pay them like $500. And the girl, they don't know what kind of damage they're doing to their own psyche. The 14-year-old girls, do you have any friends? And they're holding the money, and it's like, yeah, I got some friends. And then everybody gets roped into this stuff. And the girl,
but they're not going to, they could take this to the highest court ever and they could have pictures. But I don't know how old she is today. She was 13 when it happened. And I don't know how many years ago it was. I don't know if it's one of the years of the pictures that I have when him and Epstein are together. I don't know.
Let's be blunt and honest. Be very blunt and very honest. Trump hung out with Epstein. Trump meddled around with, young girls. He bragged already about walking in on young girls changing at his pageants. So, yes, Trump raped that young girl. Yes, he did that. She will never come out. Why? Because of the death threats that she'll accrue.
Yeah, she'll die.
And so she will be mercilessly attacked. And that is why. That is where we are. Because Trump has such a blind base that will protect him at all costs. And that is the sad part. That is why January 6th happened. That's why the death threats happen against the judges. That's why the judge put the gag order on them. And that's why Mitt Romney wrote in a book talking about the death threats that he's going to receive, or that he received, and why he didn't pursue the whole the impeachment situation. It's there, it's real, but we ignore it because we go into Biden's old.
It happened in 1994, 95. So.
She's now in her mid-40s. She's now in her mid-40s.
She has three witnesses that they have signed witness testimonies that this is the role they played in that situation at that time. So that's pretty heavy. But I mean, if I were a DA, I wouldn't take the case. So,
no, but the deal is, a lot of women drop rape charges when they find out what they're going to have to go through. And
they're the
ones that are put on trial. I mean, that's a known fact.
She dropped it after like a year because she couldn't take the heat. Not heat she deserved as the victim, but heat you get as a rape victim. Now she's 40 plus years old, and people have talked to her and said, are you up for going through it again? And she to stop this guy. Yes.
Speaking of stopping guys and everything, just really quickly, what are our thoughts? Because apparently on maybe as early as tomorrow, there is still some people on the Democratic side that are concerned, and you kind of brought it up to Toby, this notion of him being old and everything. So some of the Democratic governors are seeking a meeting with the White House to discuss their concerns in the aftermath of that poor debate performance. So what should he tell the governors? Because apparently they were on a call on Monday that was organized by the Minnesota governor, Tim Walz, and everything. And definitely they are trying to have a meeting sometime in the near future, possibly as early as tomorrow. And there are also some discussion of having Vice President Kamala Harris address them as well. So if you were Kamala or Joe Biden, what would you be telling these governors that apparently want to meet with you?
If it were me, and if I were Joe Biden, and in all honesty, if I want a great legacy, and if I want to really, show that we are in the death rattles of this whole racism and all sexism and stuff, what I would do is I would bring those governors and those donors together and say, this is our plan. Right now, Kamala Harris is polling really well. What we're going to do is we are going to put forth the first African-American woman on the ticket. You're breaking a glass ceiling on a bunch of things.
There's no
if we could push that and actually roll out a I am going to step back for the good of the nation because I've heard people speak and people fear that I am too old. So in my last push, I'm going to allow my vice president to go ahead and take my spot on top of the ticket and roll that out and roll it out again as this is our opportunity, just as the inspiration that helped propel Barack Obama being the first African American. You can have that same push and that same wave because, again, women are carrying the ticket this year. And if you throw in and if you're able to grab the black vote the way that you really can by saying, look, we're going to have the first African American woman, boom. That's what I
So,
do.
but here's what he is actually going to say. He's meeting with those people tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
All right, so he's going to say, look, just give me 2 days. You hear me now. I'm talking to you now. Do I seem out of it? And they'll be like, nah. So I'm being interviewed by George Stephanopoulos on ABC 2 days from now on Friday. Give it a watch. If you think it sounds like I have my shit together, then maybe you want to stay behind me and quit calling for me to be replaced.
You see, the problem is that with his age, he will become more feeble with each week or month, and it's not even clear that he will be able to even govern by the time that the day of the election. Never mind if he is re-elected, there will be another 4 years. How he's going to manage if he was performing like that? How can you deter the situation where he will perform just like during the debates or even worse? Where? How you can guarantee that? No. So that could become okay. No, it wasn't his day, so he could perform better than that. But at times he may perform even worse, and there is no defense against that. So this is why, with a performance like that, I mean, even the easiest questions concerning abortion, where he could decimate or should have decimated Trump, he couldn't do it. He couldn't even say 2, 3 words put together. He just became complete numb. So I think that if he really wants to benefit his party and American people or so on, I think even if he has more left in him than we saw it during the debates, okay, let be it. He still be around. Nobody will put him in a institution, so to speak. So he will be still around. He will have probably words of wisdom here and there, but he cannot govern. That's clear. Never mind election, even if there wouldn't be election, just to continue to govern with the debates like that, the man cannot continue. If he has any pride, if he has any concerns.
Hey, Sasha, along those same lines, there are some people that are being critical because even though there are a number of Democrats, including Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer and even Nancy Pelosi, that have come to his aid and come to his defense, apparently there are some of those same people that is saying that he has not reached out to him and everything. So should he be making a more of an effort to reach out to his leadership in the Democratic Party? Because that's one of the things that I saw that NBC was reporting, and a number of other people, that they have been surprised that he has not reached out to them to shore up their support of him, even though a number of those that I just mentioned have come out in support of him and even said that that was not reflective of his usual efforts and everything along those lines. So is this a tactical mistake not to reach out to his own leadership?
This is exactly what I'm trying to tell you, that he is not a leader. He's a good scholar, he's a good man, he's a good family man, he's a good father, he's a good husband. You can say many wonderful things about him. He is not a natural born leader. And that shows fine so on. He was vice president in Obama administration for 8 years. As a vice president, he did perfectly well. He was behind Obama, so Obama did whatever he had to do, and he was behind. He had to do very little, if anything. Now, when he became a leader, he's just not making. He's not cut to be a leader. That's why he has to resign for good.
So he brought up in the debate, but his sentences didn't come out strongly. But he talked about presidential scholars. There are hundreds of people in America who are professional presidential historians, and they get surveyed every 18 months or so. So Trump's been surveyed 5 times, and the highest he ever was ranked by these people, both conservative, liberal, moderate, was fourth worst president in history. He was ranked worst twice. Biden has been ranked twice. The first time he was 19th best president, the second time 14th best president. These are people who study the presidency. So I don't think it's legit to say he's not a leader. I mean, he's not a bombastic demagogue liar like Trump, but he's gotten a bunch of stuff done according to the people whose job it is to study all the presidents.
Rick, you're talking about the scholars who study presidents, and I totally agree with you. I know this information. But people are watching differently than the scholars. For people, it's a sizzle. It's what they see with their eyes. And when you see the man who hardly can walk and who talks, I don't want to even go into
Right,
it. You've seen it all.
So flip the ticket, put Harris out there, have him be the elder statesman in the second role, that he has 8 years of experience doing. And just have her out there and have her take all the hits.
Maybe that's a solution. Yeah, maybe that's a solution. There's nobody really comes forward and say, I'd like to do it. I would like to help my Democratic Party. Also, nobody comes forward. Everybody's...
Well, the reason no one is coming forward is due to the fact of traditional history, of our history, and you can go back. Nobody comes out and takes on the incumbent or takes over the incumbent.
True.
It's always you allow the incumbent to step away.
Yes.
That's what it's always been. And nobody's going to until Biden decides, hey, maybe I should. Honestly, what Rick is suggesting, again, that could be part of a rollout situation. We're going to flip. And hey, we're going to put, I'll just be the elder statesman sitting in the vice president role because all I am is a counselor anyway. And then I'll let Harris take over. If we remember back during the debates in 2020, Harris was actually winning some of those debates, and she was actually taking the lead until after the one giant spotlight moment that she had. And then I think it was Elizabeth Warren, because Bernie Bros and everybody else were jumping for her. And then there were other individuals that really just began to take that spotlight away from her, and she could never get it back because people were still searching for something new.
And you can't put anybody but Harris in because it's a total diss for black voters. Like you've got a black person, you've got also she's an Asian person, you've got a minority person right there, and you're going to put the whitest guy in the world, Newsom, in, or one of the white lady governors, Whitmer or Hochul. You lose a ton of votes right there.
And honestly,
she can get a lot of mileage on the abortion issue and women's issue. She can really do it, unlike Joe Biden. Now, Jatovia, about Joe Biden, you forgot only one thing. He is a stubborn Irishman. And things them work slightly different than with normal people. So remember this factor.
You're spot on that too. That is so true. And his whole family his family that's there is still pushing him out. They're still, hey, you can do this. You can do this. It's his inner circle that needs to crack and say, okay, we need to go a different direction. And I think earlier today we were talking about, the big donors coming in big donors are going to do that regardless. And big donors are in every party. If the big donors left the Republican Party because of the fact or did what was right by the country, they would leave the Republican Party or actually put their money behind somebody like Nikki Haley and start really pulling away from Trump, because all they're doing is paying his legal bills right now. But that's not going to happen because
there is something else. Remember that before now, internet age, everything is almost instantly becoming the information. in say 100 years ago, when Woodrow Wilson was president, and he was completely incapacitated, and his wife was continued to run the show, and very few people even know what's happening. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, he was crippled, for all intents and purposes, and he couldn't walk by himself. But yet again, it could have been camouflage, and he would be sitting and giving this public addresses or so on. But this is impossible to do now, today. Even John Kennedy could get away with many things.
Yeah, JFK could barely walk, was on a ton of drugs for pain, was bang. The only thing
Hey,
he could
Rick,
get
they did
together
get some
to do
good news, Rick and
was
Sasha,
bang
and
somebody in the he had a sex room in the basement for
Hey, Rick and Sasha and Kim and Jacoby, they did get some good news for all the bad news from the debate and everything, because apparently the Biden campaign earlier today announced that in the month of June, which we just came out of, they raised $127 million, including $38 million after the debate. So a lot of people that I guess were wanting to flood the debates and flood the money. And I've heard that some of that money might have been coming from the Republican side of people that are wanting him to stay in the race. So that's why they flooded the money in there. But he did get a bump in a monetary amount, because like I said, it was even 127 million total for the month of June and 38 million after the debate.
So it came out today.
Go ahead.
It came out today. Vanity Fair just did a big expose on RFK Jr. And the lead thing that's making people the most pissed off is that he 15 years ago, he put out a picture of himself really happily eating a dog next to the carcass of the dog. The article is just about how RFK is a scumbag in a whole bunch of different ways. When he was 45 years old,
but hold on a second, back up. Are we talking like a dog is in like a person's pet, like what you're talking about?
A woof woof doggy.
That's what I thought you were
he was in some country where they serve dog, and he's posing with the splayed out carcass of the dog, holding part of the dog and going eat and smiling like a maniac. He attacked a babysitter when he was 45. He did coke in front of a reporter. It's just this whole list. So you have two scumbags as among the three major candidates, and then you have one decent guy who's old.
I'm gonna just try to tell everyone right now, if you do anything hurtful or what looks hurtful to a dog, okay, maybe not other animals, but to a dog, the United States Americans are going to hate you. Look what happened to that woman. What's her name?
Kristi Noem.
Yeah. I mean, come on. Now everybody disowns her. Hasn't anyone watched any of John Wick's movies? He didn't go kill everyone because of anything other than they killed his dog. Every time I watch one of those movies, I go, oh God, they just killed his dog. He's going to destroy the whole world. That just don't do that. That's stupid. He could have been, like you said, in another country, and that's where they eat it. And maybe he's like, oh, wow, this is interesting. I'm real careful too now when I go eat in other countries and I'm told this is what you're eating. I'm not going to post it. I might post a lot, but I'm not going to post if I ate a dog or a cat. I mean, that's stupid. But
like you said, different societies have different attitudes about that. I'm not even sure, because I do remember Sasha's cat, which was Clinton's cat, and I remember a couple of, I think it was Millie, was the Bush dog and everything. But I'm not even sure if there is a house pet that is actually there in the White House with Biden. I'm sure there is. Jacoby, you keep track of cultural things and everything. So is there a actual house, a first pet that we've got in the White House currently?
Biden likes German Shepherds, and they're a problem for him because they keep biting Secret Service agents. So at least one of them has been exiled from the White House for being too bitey. But yeah, what Kim's saying, when you look at the profiles of Trumpers, of MAGA people, one of the most consistent thing is their love for dogs. Everybody in America loves dogs across the whole spectrum.
The irony, though, even though the MAGA people love dogs, Trump hates them.
Yeah, he's kind of afraid of animals. There's the famous clip of him, being afraid of an eagle. That they brought an eagle into his office to pose for the cover of Time magazine, and the eagle went peck, and Trump just sank out of the frame.
He should have, you know.
Well, maybe that's who Biden needs to target and everything, because as of 2024,
That would be
66% of
freaking
U.S.
awesome
households
if-
owned a pet. So maybe Biden needs to target the pet owners of the world.
No.
and everything.
During the
If
next
that is a
debate,
demographic that is not strong for Trump and everything, because apparently
during the next
of the
debate,
folks
Biden
around
walks
the U.S.
in
own a pet of a sort or another. So maybe he needs to target the pet owners.
during the next
Let's
debate.
talk about
Biden
the
walks.
latest
Hold on, let me finish my
Supreme
sentence.
Court.
Biden just walks in with an eagle perched on his shoulder. It's very
Yeah, I
American,
mean,
very
You know
patriotic.
that, I mean, but eagles are very strong and powerful. So are hawks, and I would have a little bit of a fear of them. But let's talk about the recent Supreme Court, drama that's going on right now, where the decision that they're making, media is making this big hoopla right now about, oh, the president's the king now because of all of this, even though it says whether it's active duty or unactive duty. I know for a fact that every law is written in a way that it can be manipulated by the courts to be whatever they want based on who it is and what happens. Hi, Steve. How are you doing?
Hey, how are you guys?
Do
I'm
you
sorry
think
I'm late.
the president is a king or not? Do you think we actually have dictatorship?
Well, I was going to close out today. I'm sorry I missed the show. I got stuck in traffic. But what I'm concerned about is the fact that, I've been researching a lot the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court of the United States, and I'd be curious, to learn from Sasha what it is in Canada, was always the check on the government, in terms of like reviewing acts of Congress, expanding civil rights, upholding precedent. And I think there's just a lot of concerns about it becoming now a political tool. People are just really kind of pins and needles that the court's doing everything in accordance with what is best for Trump. Now, I haven't looked into the constitutional reasons behind why they granted partial immunity, but as I was explaining over dinner last night with my son, we were talking, how interesting it is that, when they rendered the Obergefell case for gay marriage versus Hodges, it was done by a conservative court, and it was based on the constitutional right of the due process clause of the 14th Amendment, or voting rights and other things were based on equal protection clause. We really want a court of jurists, and I just don't understand how politicized it's become, and it's scary because if the Supreme Court can make these changes, then as President Biden said, yeah, Trump basically would be king, and he can break the law and basically be pardoned. Sasha, go ahead.
Pardon himself. He can. Excuse me, pardon myself.
Exactly.
Before Trump, there were so many presidents in history of the United States. Anybody has ever raised question about immunity for president? Anyone? One?
No.
Sasha, it did come up in
They
the
all
let me-
live with dignity and pride and ethics, something that Trump and, his peas in the pod buddies he hangs out with, these guys,
Sasha, I do have an answer to your question.
They don't have
I do have-
dignity and pride.
I do have an answer to Sasha's question. I think the concern is in 1973, they came up with the Nixon memo when Richard Nixon was president. And what that memo basically said that while the president was in office, they wouldn't bring new charges while he was in that office. So they were going to wait till he was out of office to bring the charges
But
against
that's
him.
nothing to do with immunity. But wait a moment.
Well, he would be immune if he was in the White House.
It's not immunity, come on, because it's
So-
been when a special prosecutor Mueller took case against Trump, he admitted that sitting president cannot be charged, and that's been around for some time, not forever, but for some time, and I could
What
understand
about
that.
Johnson?
But it's not immunity. Immunity is something different. Immunity is that even if he is out
Nixon.
of the office, but he cannot be charged ever for something what he was committed as official act while being in the office. This is a new, completely different level from.
So what Steve was talking about was actually when Nixon did say that a president is immune. And that's what came out of there was the Nixon papers talking about immunity and so on and so forth. And a president should not be above the law, which is what went on just now. And that changed that put the president above the law, because now you're saying that the state courts can't even really legally challenge or try and figure out or say that they broke the law, because then what can come about is, was this a presidential action? And now you're leaving that in the federal. That's going to get
Toby, just really quickly, because I know we only got a few more minutes to go, and I'm definitely going to hear from
on July
Tasha as
11
well.
is not going to happen. It's going to be postponed for at least a couple of months. You know,
No,
Well, they
definitely
postponed
postponed
it
and
long
everything, but-
enough that he can become president and then pardon himself as
Absolutely.
king.
Yeah,
And
it's possibly
Steve,
talking about
Steve,
everything. But I was going to bring up something
I
that
have a
Steve brought
question
up
for
and everything,
Steve.
just really quickly, since we
Yes,
only got a few
please.
more minutes to go and everything. Because there's been this notion, there was actually a paper, I think, written in the 2000s by some of those lovely people that I know Nick loves, which is scholars and everything, that actually said that ever since 1937, so we're talking way back when and everything, presidents have definitely had a history of appointing like-minded justices to the court. So there's a whole
Well, sure.
notion that it has not been partisan is not true, because definitely whether they were
Yeah, sure, but they haven't appointed
justices like
crazy-
Democratic presidents, or was it like I'm trying to think of one that did that, like Roosevelt, or whether it was the Republicans, they did oftentimes appoint people that had a like-minded view as their own.
Sure. So, question for Steve. Knowing what we know about Biden, that he's, pretty, conservative in terms of, what he's willing to try, is there anything he can do about the Supreme Court other than denounce some of their decisions and ask, say, the Senate to subpoena them?
By the way, I'm going to close out with I met the president when he landed RDU and spent a few minutes with him, which was amazing.
That's
At 2:30 in the
nice.
morning, 2:30 in the morning, and I got to spend some time with
No,
him.
you were tired. I'm sure he was too after that
Well, he was
debate.
tired, but let me take a shot at that, Rick. I've actually made a thought. The only thing President Biden can do is he can condone these. He can say this is ridiculous and everything, but it is the Supreme Court. It's the law of the land. Now, the only thing he could do is, if he were elected again, which at this point is looking very doubtful, he could use the congressional acts, to, like, for example, codify Roe v. Wade and do these things, or make changes to the way the Supreme Court is elected, selected, or putting term limits, retirement ages. But then the scary is that, now that if Trump is to win again, how many justices will he get to appoint? And you're looking at now at least 50 to 60 years of decisions that will affect these kinds of things. So there's a lot at stake here. I don't think it's over yet. I know that there's a lot of people wondering if Biden is going to step down, but I think he'll stay in there, and another day will happen. And it was an off the record thing. I made him laugh. He said, and I couldn't believe I had the audacity at 4 a.m. to ask the president, but he said, he goes, Councilman or Steve, how do you think I did? And I said, Mr. President, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the best speech or debate you could have ever had, I'd say you were at about a -6.
Oh,
Just
He laughed his butt off, and he said, that's the funniest damn thing I've heard all day.
He didn't know you were telling the
And
truth.
just really quickly,
just
just really
I was
quickly,
just
Steve, what
gonna
was
say-
it like meeting Pete? Because you also met Pete Buttigieg recently as well. So how did that meet?
Yeah, I'm
go?
gonna
I think
end with
was
that.
earlier.
I was so impressed with Pete Buttigieg. I mean, I think it was the unspoken thing. As we heard him speak, talking about the S line in Raleigh with our governor, Roy Cooper, about the high-speed line from Richmond to DC. And I tried to get an interview with them, but they just allowed an open mic interview. So I did one for WPTF. He was so articulate. And he was really able to articulate a vision about infrastructure, about the jobs. And a lot of us were whispering each other, why wasn't this being brought up during the debate? I do think that he would be a formidable opponent in a few years. His only drawback is he's gay. And I don't know whether America is ready, but boy, he's a smart guy. He's articulate, distinguished military career in Afghanistan, winning, I think, the Purple Heart.
Naval officer, right?
Naval officer. I mean, he really is
Smart
the real deal.
mathematician. When they were
Very
asking
smart.
questions in that one debate, he had math answers like nobody noticed it, but I sat there and I watched him provide mathematical answers off the top of his brain while everyone else is going, duh, 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 well, I would do, duh, 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 duh. You know, so I think
Yeah.
Pete is
But anyway,
amazing.
that's yeah. But we'll see. I've heard about Newsom, Whitmer from Michigan. Would it be Hillary Clinton again? Probably not. At the end of the day, I think this is all conjecture. I think if he does better in September, maybe it'll change the things. We don't know what's going to happen. The economy could get better. I mean, right now, I think the fact that Biden does perform better when he's an underdog. So I think the fact that we often forget, I'll close with this and then we've got to go. In March of 2020, Joe Biden was given absolutely no chance to win the Democratic nomination. I think he was close to last place. He had lost his quest for the presidency 3 times. In 1988, he was alleged of plagiarism. I remember I was in college then. He ran in 2008 against Hillary and lost with Obama as well. And he became the president of the United States after Jim Clyburn endorsed him. So I still think it's a tough race for him to win, but I wouldn't count him out. Maybe it's a good thing and that he's the incumbent and now everyone thinks, oh, it's over. So it's going to take, I think, crisp messaging. He's got to articulate why the economy is better, talk about infrastructure, maybe leveraging his cabinet, people like Pete Buttigieg who are articulate, who speak on his behalf, along with Michael Regan, the EPA director, very articulate cabinet level official. I think he's going to have to get other people in his cabinet to speak. And the final thing I'll say is go on CNN. They might as well change it to the Donald Trump channel. I mean, all they talk about is Trump. They never talk about the Democratic policies that are doing well in America. So, Trump, obviously his argument was crystal clear. We're less safe now. Putin's going to negotiate a deal with Ukraine. Hamas is going to quit trying to attack Palestine. And this guy's the worst president because he's been spending money like water. That's why inflation is high, which really isn't true. Inflation was there after he was president. But Trump's a good salesman. You did win celebrity. He was a celebrity apprentice, right?
He's a con artist, as David K. Johnson says. He's one of the best con artists out there. But I mean, that's what he learned to do in the TV industry and in the hotel industry. I mean, you have to make those sales. So,
as I told Kim at the beginning of this year, it was all about honesty. And until we're honest about the situation, Trump can lie loudly and we don't say anything about it. Nothing. We have to be honest. The man lies. Just as you called him a con artist, he is. We have to be able to call out and call him on those lies. We can't say that he sounds strong or this and that. No.
Yeah.
A liar, a rapist, a felon does not sound strong. That's what he is.
With that, we have to say goodbye. But you're absolutely right. It's all about honesty. And until Thursday night, we'll take care.
See you next week, everybody.